Welcome to Crash Course Injury Law with Joe Ghabour.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Crash Course Injury Law with Joe Ghabour, founder of Joseph M. Ghabour and Associates. Joe's a personal injury attorney licensed in New Jersey, New York, and Florida, who helps families navigate the legal process after serious and life-changing accidents. I'm Sean O'Connor, and today Joe and I are talking about wrongful death claims in New Jersey, including who can bring a claim, how these cases work, and what families should know after the loss of a loved one. Joe, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Sean.
I suppose we should start with the basics. And so the first question I have for you is, what legally qualifies as a wrongful death claim in New Jersey?
A wrongful death claim arises when a person dies because of another person's negligent, reckless, or wrongful conduct. Common examples include motor vehicle accidents, truck crashes, defective products, and certain medical malpractice cases. The claim seeks to address the loss suffered by the surviving family members as a result of the death.
What about who has standing, right? Like, who has the right to bring a wrongful death case after someone dies in an accident? Because obviously, that person's gone. Who can do it?
Well, standing is always a very, very important thing. You have to have standing in order to bring a lawsuit. So in New Jersey, the lawsuit is typically filed by the personal representative of the decedent's estate on behalf of eligible surviving family members. The individuals who may ultimately recover compensation generally include the spouses, children, other dependents, depending upon the specific family circumstances.
I have heard this term, we've got wrongful death claim and we've got something called the survival action. What's the difference between those two?
Well, a lot of times those two claims are brought together. They address different harms, however. So a wrongful death claim focuses on the impact the death has on surviving family members and the economic support they have lost going forward. Survival action, on the other hand, belongs to the deceased person's estate and essentially continues the personal injury claim the individual would have had he or she survived. It can include damages for conscious pain, for suffering, medical expenses, and other losses incurred. And this is the key, incurred between the injury and the person's passing.
Got it. Okay. Repeat that for me. Between when and when?
Between when the person was injured and the person passed away. So, for example, if a person is involved in a car accident and doesn't die on impact, for example.
Sure. Very common, right? You're in the hospital for weeks, months.
Exactly. If he or she were to die immediately upon impact, that's a wrongful death claim. But if he or she survives and dies at a later date, within a reasonable period of time, obviously, but at a later date after the accident, wherein he or she is in the hospital, they're in pain, they've suffered, that's where you have a survival action.
And what kinds of losses can be addressed through the wrongful death claim in New Jersey?
Well, the wrongful death claim is generally intended to compensate surviving family members for the financial contributions that they have lost as a result of the person's death. It can include loss of future earnings, it could include loss of benefits, loss of household services, such as cooking, cleaning, taking out, the trash, etc. It can include childcare and other forms of support that the deceased would likely have provided. So basically, whatever that person could have done and is no longer available to do, you can seek compensation for it. The law recognizes that many family contributions have value far beyond what a paycheck gives. And the claim seeks to account for those losses based upon the family's, individual circumstances.
Well, and I hear in that, Joe, a grown-up, if you will, or someone who's helping support the family. What if it's a minor child?
Well, again, the minor child has rights as well. He or she is entitled to that family member's financial support, emotional support, physical support. So all that factors into it.
No, I'm asking, what if it's a child that died? So there's not necessarily, like, they weren't supporting the family.
Well, it wouldn't be so much of financial support, but it would be everything else. It would be emotional support. It would be, loss of, you have the ability to raise your child the way that you wanted to. to see your child grow up. I mean, all that factors into it. It's a very emotional thing when it comes to wrongful death, especially when it involves children.
Let's talk about compensation. Okay, so how is compensation handled among family members when a case resolves?
Okay, so it gets a little tricky because people would assume that compensation is divided equally upon, between the surviving family members. So if there's a spouse and two children, a father, a mother, a brother. I mean, they would assume that everything gets divided equally, but it actually does not. The court has to consider the extent to which each eligible family member depended upon the deceased for support and services. The allocation process is intended to reflect the actual losses, and this is key, the actual losses suffered by the surviving beneficiary. So it's not, 10% to each of the 10 people. It's based upon, the actual losses suffered by the surviving beneficiaries.
Oh, that's interesting. I definitely didn't know that. Um, and so that doesn't necessarily mean, or would it? I'm curious about the, immediate family versus extended family in terms of eligibility, right? Like maybe, my brother is killed and we were in business, not my brother, my brother-in-law say, but we were in business together. You know what I'm saying? Like, are people outside the immediate family unit ever included in this kind of a thing?
Listen, it's on a case by case basis. So, yes, if you are business partners with someone and that person passes away due to the negligence or recklessness of someone else, you could have a claim under wrongful death because of the relationship. Now, if you are, if it's your cousin, 10 times removed and you have no relationship with them, there's not going to be a claim there, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. You're not getting a piece of the settlement. Understood. Understood. Now, what about how I'm thinking about a criminal case situation, right? Like, how can a criminal case, say, a DUI, a drunk driving prosecution, how does that affect the civil wrongful death claim?
Well, criminal cases and civil cases are completely different. They are separate proceedings. They have different standards of proof, and they serve different purposes. So the interrelationship between the two of them is basically the evidence. How evidence is developed during the criminal investigation may become important in a civil case. A criminal conviction can sometimes strengthen the civil case, but a wrongful death case may proceed even if no criminal conviction occurs. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a result of a criminal activity, but there is, a DWI, homicide by auto or something to that effect, or death by auto, then it definitely will factor into the civil claim.
What evidence becomes especially important when you're building a wrongful death case? What are you looking for?
Well, evidence generally falls into two categories. First, the evidence establishing liability. And those can be, police reports, witness statements, expert testimony, photographs. The second, pile of evidence, for lack of a better term, is basically evidence that demonstrates the impact of the loss, such as employment records, financial information, family testimony, which a lot of times is very emotional, a day in the life, of a person, a video that is a day in the life, tax returns, any documentation showing the deceased's contributions to the household and family.
I know you. How long have you been doing this?
I've been practicing for 23 years, a little over 23.
23. Yeah, I knew it was more than a couple decades. I'm just wondering, in all the cases you've seen, is there one that stands out where, understanding the person's life helped kind of explain the full impact of the loss? Because, there's a story there, right, that you need to be telling.
Well, it's always important to try to understand how the decedent lived, what contributions he had for his family, how his family, dealt with him and are now dealing without him or her. So, you have to understand how that person was and how he impacted his family. So it's very important to get into that. But, wrongful death claims are often very, very, very hard to prosecute in the sense of it takes an emotional toll both on the family and quite frankly on the attorneys as well.
I'm thinking about the families. You mentioned that. I'm wondering, to the extent that, you can prepare people or help them understand what should families understand about how these cases move forward. Especially like you said, it's so emotional. They're grieving. dealing with, tragedy, basically. How do you, what guidance do you give them?
Well, I always tell my clients that, they have to take care of themselves first. We have a statute of limitations for a reason. So in New Jersey, for example, you have 2 years from the date of the wrongful death to file a lawsuit. Generally, of course, there's some exceptions, but that's the general rule. So I always tell them, listen, take some time to mourn. Take some time to do what you need to do as a family. We can always focus on the case after the fact, let some time pass by. Not that time heals all wounds, as people say. It doesn't. There's no compensation that can ever replace a person that passed away as a result of someone else's negligence or otherwise, quite frankly. But, take care of the family first, and then we'll get to the aspects. Obviously, it's always important to get to the lawsuit as soon as possible so that evidence is preserved, but more often than not, wrongful death cases are pretty clear cut who is at fault and what the damages are because the person passed away.
Yeah, I was just wondering about that because I mean the timing issue, right? Which is like, yeah, of course, take care of yourselves, grieve. We have a 2-year window, but I was thinking about because in just general conversations around liability cases, car accidents, and things like that, it's like, well, you got to get that evidence and the footage and whatever else might be available before it disappears, so to speak. But because these cases are so extreme, that's not as important, it sounds like.
It's still important, but I have to tell you that a lot of times the evidence that is presented, especially if there's a wrong, let's say it's a car accident and someone passes away, the police will investigate and they will do a great job investigating, and there'll be plenty of evidence and photographs. And I have to tell you, those pictures are generally not something you want a family member to look at after a wrongful death, auto accident, or truck accident. They're horrific. So, for most part, the evidence would be preserved through the prosecutor's office or the police investigators. But again, we need as much evidence as possible. But again, my advice to my clients is take some time, mourn, and we'll get to it.
Got it. That's a great spot to end, man. Thank you. Thank you. We're up against time for this episode, Joe, but thanks for sharing your expertise. Thanks for walking us through all of that. Really clear and informative. I look forward to connecting on a future episode.
Thank you, Sean.
That's it for today's episode of Crash Course Injury Law with Joe Ghabour. If you want to learn more about wrongful death claims and the legal options available to families after a fatal accident, visit GhabourLaw.com. You'll find clear, practical resources to help you understand the process and your rights under New Jersey law. Thanks for listening. I'm Sean O'Connor, and don't forget, if you found this informative, leave a review. Maybe leave us a thumbs up or even subscribe to the show so you don't miss a future episode. Thanks very much. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.